Daniel
It's a
Harper was
beautiful
not
view.
the kind of man who paid
Yes,
attention
it
to
puts
small
things in
details.
perspective.
Indeed.
Indeed, as one of New York City's youngest self-made millionaires, his world revolved around numbers, contracts and investments. His days began before sunrise, in his glass-walled penthouse overlooking Manhattan, and ended long after the city lights blurred into the night. To him were efficient pieces of a much larger machine, but lately one employee had begun to stand out. Emily Carter had worked at Harper & Company for nearly a year. She was punctual, professional, and exceptionally organized. She handled reports with precision and never missed a deadline. Daniel appreciated efficiency, and Emily had plenty of it. Yet it wasn't her performance that caught his attention. It was her routine after work. Every evening at exactly 7:15 p.m., Emily would shut down her computer, gather her warm leather bag, and leave in a hurry. She never joined coworkers for dinner. She never stayed to chat while others laughed near the elevators. Emily would already be gone, her expression tense and distracted. At first, Daniel thought nothing of it. People had private lives. It wasn't his concern, but one night, as he stood by his office window reviewing financial projections, he happened to glance down at the street. Through the reflection of city lights, he saw Emily exiting the building. She didn't call a taxi. She didn't wait for a ride share. Instead, she walked. That struck him as odd. Most of his employees earned enough to afford comfortable transportation, especially at night, yet she walked quickly, almost anxiously blending into the crowd. The next evening, curiosity began to tug at him again. Daniel told himself it was simple management awareness. A good leader understood his team. That was all, nothing more. But deep down, he knew it wasn't entirely professional interest. When 7:15 came, he closed his laptop without finishing his report, something he never did, and took the private elevator down. He stepped outside just in time to see Emily turning the corner, keeping a careful distance. He followed. They moved away from the bright towers of Midtown, and into quieter streets. The polished storefronts disappeared. The sidewalks grew narrower. Luxury cars became older models parked along cracked pavement. Daniel felt strangely out of place, in his tailored suit and polished shoes. Emily kept walking, her pace steady, her shoulders slightly tense. She didn't look around. She didn't check her phone. It was as if she had one destination and nothing else mattered. After nearly 20 minutes, she stopped in front of an older apartment building. The brick was faded, the entrance light flickering slightly. It was far from the high-end neighborhoods Daniel was accustomed to. She hesitated only a second before entering. Daniel remained across the street, staring at the building. Questions filled his mind. Why would someone so talented live here? Why the rush every night? Why the secrecy? For the first time in years, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. Not ambition, not strategy. Curiosity, and perhaps something deeper that he couldn't yet name. He didn't know it then, but that single decision to follow her would change far more than he ever expected. Daniel stood across the street for several long moments, staring at the worn brick building Emily had just entered. The neighborhood was quiet, lit by dim streetlights and the occasional passing car. This wasn't a dangerous area, but it was far removed from the polished, luxurious world he lived in. He told himself he should leave. This wasn't his business, and yet his feet didn't move. After a minute, he crossed the street, slowly adjusting his coat, as if trying to blend into surroundings that clearly didn't belong to him. The building's entrance door hadn't fully shut. It clicked softly in the wind. Daniel hesitated only briefly before stepping inside. The hallway smelled faintly of old wood and cleaning supplies. The paint on the walls was slightly chipped. A single overhead light flickered as he walked past a row of mailboxes. He could hear faint sounds. A television somewhere running water from another apartment. Then he heard Emily's voice, soft, gentle, completely different from her professional office tone. "It's okay, Mom, I'm here now," she said quietly. Daniel froze near the stairwell. "Mom?" He hadn't expected that. He moved carefully up the stairs, stopping when he reached the second floor. One apartment door was slightly open, just enough for warm yellow light to spill into the hallway. He didn't intend to intrude, but the scene inside caught him off guard. Emily was kneeling beside an elderly woman sitting in a wheelchair. The woman looked frail, her gray hair thin, her hands trembling slightly. Emily was removing her coat while speaking soothingly, adjusting a blanket over the woman's legs. "You didn't have to wait up," Emily said with a small smile. The apartment was small, modest furniture, worn couch, a tiny kitchen visible from the living room. It wasn't miserable, but it clearly showed struggle. This wasn't the home of someone living comfortably. Daniel watched as Emily moved naturally around the space. She prepared medicine, checked a small notebook on the table, and carefully helped her mother sip water. There was no frustration in her face, no impatience, only quiet devotion. Her mother reached for her hand. "You work too hard," the older woman whispered weakly. Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's worth it." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. At the office, Emily was composed and distant, efficient, controlled. But here she was different, warmer, softer, strong. He suddenly understood the rushed exits, the late nights, the tired eyes she sometimes tried to hide behind professionalism. She wasn't careless with her time. She was carrying the weight of someone else's life on her shoulders. A floorboard creaked beneath Daniel's shoe. He stepped back instantly, heart racing, worried she might notice him. But Emily was too focused on helping her mother eat dinner. Daniel quietly descended the stairs and exited the building. The cool night air hit him, but his thoughts were burning. All this time he had assumed her distance meant secrecy or distraction. Instead it was sacrifice. He returned to his car, slowly glancing once more at the apartment window, glowing faintly above for the first time in years. Daniel felt small, not because of money, not because of power, but because he realized how little he truly understood about the people around him, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. Daniel tried to return to normal the next day. He sat at the head of the long glass conference table, listening to presentations about investments and expansion strategies. Numbers filled the large digital screen. Voices discussed percentages and profit margins. But his mind wasn't there. Instead, he kept seeing a small apartment lit by a warm yellow lamp. Emily kneeling beside her mother, the tenderness in her voice. He had built his empire, believing that success was measured in financial growth. But now, for the first time, he questioned that belief. That evening when 7:15 approached, Daniel didn't pretend he was working late. He knew exactly what he was doing. Again, he followed her. But this time, not out of suspicion. Out of understanding, Emily walked the same route, her pace steady and purposeful. Daniel followed at a respectful distance. When she reached the apartment building, he stayed outside. He didn't need to intrude this time. He simply watched the light turn on in the second-floor window. A few minutes later, a woman from the neighboring building stepped outside to water her plants. She glanced at Daniel briefly, then followed his gaze upward. "You looking for Emily?" the woman asked casually. Daniel hesitated. "I work with her." The neighbor smiled gently. "She's a good girl. That one carries more than most people could handle." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Her mother is sick?" The woman nodded. "Very. Hospital bills nearly took everything they had. Emily quit college to work full-time. Refused to put her mother in a facility. Says family stays together." The words hit him harder than any business loss ever had. Quit college, 2 jobs, medical debt, and yet she never once mentioned it at work. Never asked for an advance. Never showed weakness. "Does she have any help?" Daniel asked quietly. The neighbor shook her head. "Just herself." When the woman went back inside, Daniel remained standing there. Staring at the window, he thought about his own life. The empty penthouse, the silent dinners, the endless meetings. He had everything money could buy,
yet nothing that felt meaningful. Meanwhile, Emily,
with so little, possessed something powerful, purpose. Later that night, Daniel returned home but couldn't sleep. He walked through his spacious apartment, noticing how quiet it was. Too quiet. The city lights outside felt cold instead of impressive. For the first time, he felt ashamed of how easily he had judged people by appearances. The next morning at the office, he observed Emily carefully. She looked tired, faint shadows under her eyes, yet she greeted colleagues politely and delivered reports flawlessly. At one point, she dropped a pen. Daniel instinctively bent down to pick it up before she could. Their hands brushed briefly. She looked surprised. "Thank you, Mr. Harper." Her voice was steady, professional. But he noticed something else now. Strength, resilience. In that simple moment, Daniel realized something undeniable. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It wasn't just admiration. It was respect, and somewhere deep within him, something had begun to grow. Something unfamiliar, something real. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't thinking about building his company. He was thinking about building a life that meant something. And somehow Emily was at the center of that thought. Daniel didn't act impulsively. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to solve a situation with a quick financial transaction. This wasn't a business problem. It was personal and delicate. He spent several days thinking carefully. He reviewed Emily's performance records, not because he needed proof, but because he wanted everything he did to feel justified and respectful. She had earned every opportunity through hard work. Finally, one Friday afternoon, he asked his assistant to schedule a private meeting with her. When Emily stepped into his office, she looked nervous. Her posture was straight, but her fingers tightened slightly around the notebook she carried. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Harper." Daniel noticed the hesitation in her voice. For a moment he felt guilty. She probably feared she had done something wrong. "Please sit down, Emily," he said gently. She sat across from him, her eyes cautious but calm. "I've been reviewing your work." Daniel began. "Your performance has been exceptional, consistent, reliable. You've contributed more to this company than you probably realize." Emily blinked, clearly surprised. "Thank you, sir. I just tried to do my job well." "That's exactly the point," Daniel replied. "You do more than that." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I'd like to offer you a promotion. Senior Operations Coordinator. It comes with a significant salary increase and flexible hours." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "Flexible hours, yes," Daniel continued. "You can structure your schedule in a way that works best for you, as long as responsibilities are handled. I trust your professionalism." She stared at him, trying to understand why. She asked softly. Daniel held her gaze. "Honest and steady because you deserve it." There was a long silence. Then he added, more quietly, "and because I know you're carrying more than just work." Her expression changed instantly. "Shock, vulnerability, you know," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but I understand enough to know. You shouldn't have to do everything alone." For a moment, Emily looked as though she might deny it. Instead, her eyes filled with tears. She had clearly been holding back for months. "I never wanted anyone to feel sorry for me." She said, "I don't," Daniel replied firmly. "I admire you." That word seemed to reach her deeper than sympathy ever could. He continued, "Our company has connections with top medical specialists in the city. If you're open to it, I'd like to help arrange better treatment for your mother." Emily covered her mouth briefly, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," Daniel said softly. "Just know this isn't charity. It's support. You've earned that." Tears slipped down her cheeks. But this time they weren't tears of exhaustion. They were tears of relief. In the weeks that followed, things began to change. Emily's schedule eased. Her mother received improved care. The constant weight she carried started to lift, and something else grew between them slowly. Respectfully, late evenings turned into shared conversations. Professional discussions softened into personal stories. Daniel found himself smiling more, laughing more one evening after walking her to her car. He paused. "I followed you once," he admitted quietly. Emily raised an eyebrow. "And it was the best decision I ever made." She smiled, not the polite office smile, but something real. Daniel had built his fortune from ambition, but love that came from understanding. And this time he was ready to invest his heart.